All right, so get ready because today we're going to do a deep dive
Yeah,
into
I bet.
what it really means to be responsible when it comes to, sex and relationships.
Okay.
This is always a,
Always a good topic.
yeah, a good topic to revisit.
Yeah.
And our source material for this is a conversation between these two friends, Lisa and Naomi.
Okay.
And they just got out of this class about sex and
I
relationships.
see.
And their conversation gets into some really insightful things that I
Mhm.
think could challenge some of the common assumptions we have about intimacy.
I think it's really interesting how they go beyond just the sex ed basics
Right.
and really look at what does a responsible relationship look like?
Yeah.
Not just physically, but emotionally too.
Yeah. What really stood out to me was
Hmm.
how Elisa had this like aha moment about the emotional side of things.
Oh, interesting.
You know,
Yeah.
like she realized she needs to understand her own needs
Hmm.
before, getting involved with someone,
Right.
not just kind of going with the flow or giving in to pressure or
Well,
whatever.
which is huge.
Yeah,
Like, that's such a powerful shift
totally.
in thinking
Yeah,
to really take ownership of your choices in relationship.
right.
It's not about conforming expectations, but like, what do you want?
Right.
What do you deserve?
And that ties into another
Yeah.
big takeaway from their conversation, which is consent.
Okay. Yeah.
Issa was really surprised to learn that consent goes way beyond just a simple yes.
It's not just a one-time thing.
Yeah.
It's like this ongoing process throughout any sexual encounter. It
It's
has to be
really-
enthusiastic and could be withdrawn at any time.
Yeah,
And that's really crucial because it puts the power back in the hands of both individuals.
exactly.
Like you're constantly communicating, making sure that everyone feels comfortable and safe.
It makes you wonder why this ongoing consent thing isn't talked about more.
Right.
Like it seems
It seems so obvious.
yeah.
It's so obvious.
But like it's
I guess it's a shift from that traditional view of consent as like a one-time agreement,
right.
which could make people feel obligated
Yeah.
or pressured to continue even if they're not comfortable anymore.
Totally.
And this new understanding really emphasizes that, like, you have the right to change your mind
For sure.
at any point.
Anytime. And speaking of communication,
Yeah.
Lisa and Naomi talked a lot about how crucial open and honest communication is with a partner.
Yes.
And I think this is even before things get physical. Like Naomi specifically mentions setting those expectations and boundaries
Right.
before becoming intimate.
It's about having those sometimes awkward conversations
Yeah.
about, what you're comfortable with,
Yeah.
what your boundaries are,
What are we doing here?
what are we looking for in this relationship.
Yeah. What's the deal? And Lisa even gives specific examples
Oh, cool.
of things she would want to discuss, like
Hmm.
protection,
Okay.
getting tested for STIs, and even emotional expectations.
Like all the things,
Yeah.
this is so important. This
Yeah.
is the foundation of building a healthy and respectful relationship.
Totally.
It's about making sure both partners are on the same page
Yes.
and that they feel like they can be open and honest
Right.
with each other without being judged.
So we've got consent, we've got communication.
Uh-huh.
But what about the more practical
bit there.
aspects of responsibility? Like
Yes.
Lissy and Naomi also talked about protection
Yes.
and STI testing.
Okay.
And their conversation about protection goes beyond just the basics.
Oh,
Naomi highlights this idea of dual protection.
dual protection.
Which means using condoms along with another form of contraception.
Got it.
So it's like a
Double layer.
double layer of safety.
Safety. Right. Yes.
And not just for preventing pregnancy, but also for protecting against STDs.
Yes, exactly.
So this links back to that theme of taking responsibility
Mhm.
for your own health and the health of your partner.
Right.
And speaking of STs,
Yes.
it was really refreshing to hear
Okay.
how Elisa and Naomi viewed getting tested.
Yeah.
It wasn't about shame or fear.
Right.
It was about taking control of their sexual health.
I love that. It's like seeing it as a normal and responsible action,
Right.
which I think is so important because it
Exactly.
normalizes these conversations
Yeah,
and it encourages people to be proactive
totally.
about their health.
So it sounds like they walked away from that class with a totally new outlook
Yeah,
on sex and relationship.
for sure.
I'm curious, though, what did they have to say about, like, navigating the emotional side
The emotional side.
of intimacy?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, because their conversation really gets into how sex isn't just a physical act.
Right.
It can really, like, intensify a connection.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, if you and your partner aren't on the same page emotionally,
Totally.
things can get messy.
Yeah, Lisa actually brought up a personal story here
Oh, wow.
about a time when she felt pressured into being intimate with someone before she was ready.
Wow.
And it made her realize
Mm-hmm.
how important it is to be honest with yourself and your partner about your needs.
That's really vulnerable of her to share that. It makes you think about all the times
Yeah,
that we might ignore those feelings inside,
totally.
especially when, society's kind of telling us to do something different.
Exactly. Or like you have certain expectations and you kind of
Right.
push those feelings down.
Yeah,
But that can really lead to confusion and hurt.
totally.
It's really about respecting yourself enough
Yeah.
to make choices that are good for you emotionally.
And isn't that a key part of what responsible sexual behavior is all
Yeah,
about?
absolutely.
It's not just about physical safety, but also being emotionally responsible
Yes.
for yourself and respecting your partner's emotions too.
It's a holistic approach
Yeah.
to intimacy.
Yeah.
And this actually leads perfectly into their discussion
Oh, okay.
about healthy versus unhealthy relationships.
Yeah, they did get into that.
Yeah.
Did anything in particular stand out to me from that conversation?
Oh, yeah, they talked about some, like, really clear red flags.
Oh, like what?
These, like, pressure,
Okay.
manipulation, and guilt tripping.
Yeah.
These are, like, huge indicators that
Mm.
a relationship lacks that mutual respect.
Right.
It's one person trying to control the other,
Right.
which is never okay.
And that kind of controlling behavior can be really sneaky, right?
Oh, for sure.
It's not always obvious.
Yeah, it can be subtle,
Yeah.
like negging or guilt trips,
Mm-hmm.
where it can be more like in your face,
Yeah.
threats or ultimatums.
Yeah.
The key is to recognize these things early on
For sure.
and address them
Right.
before they get out of control.
Yeah. This talk about emotional responsibility and respect
Yes.
makes me think about the concept of aftercare,
Oh, yeah.
which Naomi mentioned.
I love that she brought that up. Yeah. It's basically making sure both partners feel safe and secure
Mm-hmm.
and respected after intimacy.
Like, intimacy doesn't end
It doesn't end.
when the physical act is over.
No.
There's this whole emotional component that needs attention too.
It's often overlooked,
Yeah, I bet.
but it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
You're fostering a sense of security and vulnerability
Totally.
in the relationship.
It's amazing how much they covered in their conversation.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about the mechanics of sex.
Right.
It was about the emotional intelligence you need
Yeah.
to have healthy relationships.
Their discussion really highlighted the importance of being informed,
Mm-hmm.
not just about the physical stuff,
Yeah.
but also the emotional and psychological aspects of
Yeah.
intimacy.
Yeah, for sure.
And that is empowering.
Totally. So if we try to distill all of this down,
Yeah.
what would you say are like the biggest takeaways for our listeners?
I think the most important takeaway is that responsibility in a sexual relationship
Yeah.
goes way beyond just using protection.
It's about approaching intimacy with respect and awareness.
Yes.
And a commitment to that open and honest communication.
Being on the same page.
Yeah.
You know,
Totally. And understanding consent.
yes.
Setting boundaries.
Boundaries are huge.
Yeah. And prioritizing both your well-being
Mm-hmm.
and your
And friends,
partners.
too.
Elisa and Naomi seemed to walk away from that class feeling really empowered.
Yeah.
Like they had this new sense of control and confidence.
Absolutely.
It makes me wonder, like, what can our listeners do to
Yeah.
cultivate that same feeling in their own lives?
Well, knowledge is power, right?
Right.
So I think it starts with educating ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many resources out there these days.
Oh, yeah.
Books, articles, podcasts,
That's-
workshops.
Yeah.
It's about like actively seeking out information
Mm-hmm.
and having these open conversations
Yeah.
with friends, partners,
Even healthcare providers.
healthcare providers. Exactly.
And it's not a one-time thing either.
It's
It's
not
an ongoing process of learning
Yes.
and growing.
always learning.
I mean, just listening to Elisa and Naomi's conversation, I feel like I've learned a lot.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that we can always, discover more
Yeah.
about ourselves and our relationships.
Totally. So for anyone listening who wants to dive deeper into this,
Yeah.
where would you suggest they start?
Well, I would recommend checking out organizations
Okay.
like Planned Parenthood
Okay.
or Scarlet Teen.
Mm-hmm.
They offer a lot of really good evidence-based information
Yeah.
about sexual health, relationships, and communication
Awesome.
in a way that's accessible and inclusive.
I think the most important thing to remember is you're not alone in this.
You're not alone.
Like, we're all constantly learning and evolving.
We are.
When it comes to relationships and intimacy.
Exactly. And having these open and honest conversations
Yes.
is how we create this culture of respect and understanding
Right.
and healthy relationships for everyone.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
And I hope it's done the same for you.
Yeah.
If you're feeling inspired to kind of explore your own relationships and boundaries,
Yeah, go for it.
I encourage you to do so.
Yep.
Remember, knowledge is power.
It is.
Communication is key.
Yes.
And respecting yourself and your partner is paramount.
Could not have said it better myself.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed,
Stay informed.
and keep the conversation going. I do